Okay, we're now recording the July 2026 meeting of the North Texas Renewable Energy Group. Go ahead, Georgianne.
Thank you so much, Bill. Good morning, everyone. My name is Georgianne Moss, and I am the co-program chair for North Texas Renewable Energy Group. Normally, our president, Tracy Wallace, would be chairing the meeting, but she had a conflict this morning, and so I agreed to do this for her. And so my colleague and I, Bill Byram, work together and we come up with ideas for the programs each month, but we would love to hear from you. So if there's anything that you want to hear about related to renewable energy, energy efficiency, or any of the things that we called clean energy, please let us know, because we would love to be sure and provide the things that you are interested in learning about. And before we get started today, and before I introduce our wonderful speaker, Nathan May, I would like Bill to tell us about next month's meeting, because it's a little bit different.
Yes. So we're going to have a field trip. And I sent a message out yesterday on groups.io. So I'm hoping everybody that's on here is on the NTREG groups.io. If not, then you haven't seen this yet. So for our August meeting, we're going to be meeting at Enphase Energy. It's Enphase Energy. They have a manufacturing location in Arlington, but it's a business and they're not open on Saturdays. And so we're having to do this on a weekday. So we decided to do it the day before our normal meeting day, which is the second Saturday of the month. So instead of doing it on Saturday, August the 8th, our normal meeting day, we're doing the meeting on Friday, August the 7th. And we have to do it sometime during the working day. We thought about doing it at the end of the day, but we thought, oh my, the DFW traffic, people are going to be going crazy trying to get out of work and getting over there before it gets to be too late. So we decided to try doing it at the lunch period. So we were thinking those of you that are still working might be able to take a long lunch break and come over during lunch. So we're going to be meeting starting at 11:30 a.m. at Enphase Energy, Enphase. The address is 2400 Centennial Drive in Arlington. And in a minute, I'll copy this into the chat. So Enphase Energy is a company that is well known to people that are in the residential solar business. They're best known for their microinverters. These are things that go onto your roof, typically behind one or two solar panels, and they directly convert the DC from the solar panel into AC. So you have what's typically called an AC coupled system. For many small, simple systems, this is the least expensive way of doing it. Sometimes a little bit just simpler too. So Enphase is a rather popular company. So they make these microinverters. They also now make energy storage. They have a lot of batteries, which is going to be very popular with residential storage. And I found out they also make thermostats. They now make home EV chargers, and they make portable power systems, battery boxes, which you can charge from solar. They have batteries in them. They have inverters. So they can give you, it's another way of providing power in case of a power outage for something small, like maybe power one refrigerator or something. So we're going to be going to their manufacturing location. We'll be able to do a tour of it. This means if you've ever been around industry, nobody can be wearing open-toed shoes. You know, no sandals unless no what people commonly call sandals or flip-flops. You have to have closed-top shoes. So this is for safety. So if you have open top shoes, you will not be allowed into the manufacturing floor area. So that's the main restriction there. We're going to be meeting at 11:30. They're also going to give us some presentation about their products. So we'll learn about their things as well as seeing how they're manufactured.
Wonderful,
And,
Bill. Thank you. And that
Mhm.
and there will be an attendance limit, and so it's going to be first come, first serve. Bill, do you remember how many people offhand?
Well, well, they can put us through in groups of people. So
Okay.
if we have,
Okay.
for instance, if we had 25 people, that's too many. So they might split us into two groups
Okay.
of 12.
Wonderful.
But because of this, we they really would like a head count so they can organize their thing. So
Yes.
if you want to go to this, please send me an email. And I'll include this in the chat. I'll post it in there. So please send me an email in advance, letting me know how if you're going to be there and the names of the people from your party that will be there. So if you and your cousin and your wife will be there, include all the names so I can make a master list so I can figure out how many people will be there. Thank you.
Bill?
Wonderful. Thank you. That sounds very exciting. Did I hear somebody have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, how about non-NTREG groups like the Association of Energy Engineers or the Dallas Electric Club? Could we
Oh,
forward the
sure.
invitation? Okay.
Absolutely.
We allow people to visit our meetings and including our field trips. So that would be fine also.
Just
Yes.
emphasize that you need to be contacted first to
Yes.
Yes,
give
and
them their name. Yeah.
I'm going to
Yes.
include that information in the chat in just a minute, and it was included on the groups.io post I made to the NTREG
Wonderful.
REG groups.io.
Wonderful. And we'll probably have a meetup afterwards. If anybody wants to meet for lunch, we'll pick a place and everybody who wants to can meet for lunch afterwards and discuss what we learned. So
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you for finding, I think I can't remember if it's you or Randy Boys, our former president, who found that for us, but thank you both. So I am so excited that we have Nathan May here with us today. Nathan is an educator with the Trinity River Audubon Center in Dallas. And he actually spoke to the Dallas Council of Garden Clubs, which I am a member. And I got so excited when I was listening to him speak to the garden club ladies because he started talking about renewable energy and solar and how the Audubon organization is for renewable energy because it's better for birds. And I thought, you know what? This is a message that more people need to hear because sometimes you hear people say, oh, wind energy is bad for birds or birds flying over the solar farms, drop dead from heat or something. So I thought that it would be a good idea for him to come and talk to us about why Audubon thinks that renewable energy is a good thing, and also how they came to that conclusion and what, if any, solutions they have for some of the known issues that happen to some of our birds. And so, Nathan, I will let Nathan tell you more about himself. I will just tell you he is a Renaissance man. He has many areas of expertise and all of them are fascinating, and they all join together in how we can protect not only birds but our environment. And I'm excited to welcome him. So thank you, Nathan, for joining us.
All right, thank you. I just tried to share the presentation. Can you give me a thumbs up if it worked out? You see it now? No. Okay, great. Wonderful. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, George Ann. Appreciate it. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah, she hit the nail on the head, summed it up well. I was excited to give that presentation for the Council of Garden Clubs. It was a fun presentation. It was one I made just for that because they had already had some bird groups and Audubon come out and talk about some of the things we normally say for how to protect urban birds. So they were like, can you go a little bit more in depth? And I did. I gave a little bit of the behind the scenes on protecting urban birds, the kind of stuff that we talk about within the bird conservation circle rather than just the top line messaging that we give out to a member of the public or someone who's coming to visit us at one of our centers. And so for this, I'm excited to do a little bit of a similar thing, but more around renewable energy and climate change. I'm assuming if we're in this group today, we've got at least some sort of base level knowledge about climate change and what's going on with that. So we can start from that and sort of dive into Audubon's position in the movement for renewable energy and the work we're doing, and hopefully how we can work with groups like yours to advance the future that we're all trying to create. I'll start though talking a little bit about the National Audubon Society. If you're a big bird person, you've probably heard of us before, but if not, then I'll tell you a little bit. We're over a century old, and our organization is dedicated to protecting birds and the places they need. Since we're a really old organization, we're one of the major trusted voices in bird conservation. Audubon has volunteer chapters all over the country. So I work for Trinity River Audubon Center. That's not a chapter, but there's a Dallas chapter of the Audubon Society. There is a Fort Worth chapter of the Audubon Society that are volunteer led. Audubon also owns and leases land all over the place that they manage for bird habitat to protect birds. Audubon does a lot of research and science around bird conservation and has over 30 Audubon centers across the U.S. where the public can come and learn about nature and bird conservation. And that's where I am. I work at the Trinity River Audubon Center, which is in Southeast Dallas. Anybody in the meeting ever been? You know, been in the Trinity River Audubon Center? All right, I see one hand. Awesome. Really cool place. It's beautiful. We've got 244 different kinds of birds that we have documented here at this center. If you're looking for a place to come walk around, highly recommend. I know it's a little hot right now, so it might not be your ideal hiking weather, but you know, once it is, you should come on out. It's a cool place. And if you're in the environmental space, which we all are, I'm sure at some point you've heard the term canary in the coal mine. I know I hear it all the time. And it's talking about how the health of the canary in the mine indicates what's to come for the health of humans. And it's not just canaries, it's birds as a whole. Scientists pay a lot of attention to birds because they're measurable indicators of ecosystem health. And if you didn't know, birds are not doing so hot. North American bird populations have plummeted by about 1/3 in the last 50 years, which is very bad. And I know y'all are climate people, so I'm sorry to hit you with yet another big, bad, scary number, but I know you get it, setting up the context so we can talk about the solutions. If we dive into it a little bit more complicated of a graph here, I'll show you. You can look at the specifics of the decline of birds. This is from last year's State of the Birds report. Almost every category of birds here is in decline, except for in the last 50 years, dabbling and diving ducks and water birds have actually increased due to conservation efforts. But in recent years, the ducks are falling off again, so we're worried about that right now. If you look at these, you can see the bottom category is grassland dependent birds. Birds that depend on a healthy prairie grassland ecosystem are doing worse than any other kind of bird in North America. And North Texas is a grassland ecosystem historically. That is what Dallas was built on, the Blackland Prairie. And the birds that depend on that prairie, they're doing worse than any other kind of bird. So things are rough, but the good news is things that improve the bird population also tend to have benefits for humans. So Audubon's goal is to not just stop the downward trend of the bird population, but to reverse it and do a little something we like to call bending the bird curve. Kind of like how we were trying to flatten the curve for COVID back in the day. We're trying to bend this curve back up, bring the birds back. There are several things that have contributed to the decline in birds that we can see on the graph on the left. Main one being habitat loss, especially for prairies and grasslands. So if habitat loss is this main thing that has driven this decline in birds, why am I here talking about renewable energy? Well, the biggest threat that birds faced in the last 100 years was habitat destruction. The biggest threat that birds face in the next 100 years is climate change. That doesn't mean habitat destruction is not still a major threat to birds, something that we're still very worried about, but climate change is the biggest threat facing birds going forward in the future. Audubon, like I said, does a lot of science, and our scientists crunched some numbers. Back in 2019, big report came out from Audubon called Survival by Degrees, and it found, after crunching the numbers, that 2/3 of North American bird species face an increased risk of extinction from climate change shifting their habitable ranges. That's 389 species of birds on the brink. You can see here in this video here, if you go to our website, this is all of the birds that they studied. If it's on the left, it's either doing okay or it's, impacted negatively, but not that bad. If it's on the right, it's hurting hard. So Audubon mapped out the projected range change scenarios for all of these birds under 3 different warming scenarios. If you're climate people, then these numbers might be familiar to you. 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, 2 degrees Celsius of warming, and 3 degrees Celsius of warming. Keep this going again. I know that the dream of 1.5 Celsius of warming might seem less and less attainable, maybe even like a joke to some of us now. But I want us to remember that there is a whole world of possibilities between each of these scenarios, between 1.5 degrees, between 2 degrees and 3 degrees, and even beyond that. Beyond 3 degrees, they're all bad scenarios, but there's still lots of different scenarios. And our report found that 76% of bird species are better off under 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming than they would be under 3 degrees Celsius of warming. And 150 species of birds are no longer at an increased risk of extinction under the cooler scenario. You can see at 1.5, there's some birds in the red. The ones that are in the red are in a lot of trouble. But in 3 degrees Celsius warming, 3 degrees Celsius, there are a ton of birds in this red zone. So we want to stop warming at as low of a number as possible to save as many birds as possible. That's kind of the data heavy number overview. Let's put some faces to those numbers, talk about what that means. Here's a beautiful bird, the indigo bunting. This is a picture I took a few weeks ago right here at the Audubon Center. I don't know if any of y'all have ever seen this bird before. It's stunning. It's so blue. It's moderately impacted by climate change. This is one that stopping climate change sooner can make a big difference for this bird. In 1.5 degrees of warming, it's affected, but not nearly as much as in a more intense warming scenario. If you go to the Audubon website, this is a really cool tool that I want y'all to know about. There's like a bird guide. So you can go to any bird species in the US, and if you click on the conservation tab, you can actually see the projected range changes for any of these birds under different warming scenarios. So you can see the indigo bunting loses some range, it gains a little range up in the north, so hopefully it's not going to go extinct anytime soon. But Dallas is on the edge of this bird's range already. And with climate change, with this warming, there is a good chance that it's not going to be super common to see this bird in Texas anymore by the end of the century. And that's a bummer for me because I see these all the time where I work, and they're really beautiful birds, and it will be sad to see them go. And we can make a big difference for these if we stop warming sooner. Here's another bird. I don't know if any of y'all have ever seen this one in North Texas before. Crested caracara, very cool. Climate change isn't automatically bad news for every species of bird. Some birds actually, they make out okay. They even end up gaining range. Now this bird, I've seen this a lot in North Texas, and that's actually significant. Ooh, I see something in the chat. I'll pull that up just in case anyone's saying anything cool. Oh, thank you. Yeah, wonderful. For dropping that link. Now it's significant that we're seeing this bird. Now this chart on the left, I know it's kind of hard to read, it's sideways. Mostly you should need to see that it goes up. Back in the 60s, data from surveys that Audubon does every year called the Christmas bird count was finding that participants were on average finding less than one of these birds in Texas every Christmas bird count every year. Now the average is over 50 per year. So this bird's range is expanding northward. It already has expanded northward, and it's going to continue expanding northward due to climate change. Interestingly, you'll see here's at 1.5, you can see it coming north, 2 coming further to the north. Once you get all the way to 3, it actually ends up losing some of what it's gained, but it's still pretty stable. This isn't a bird we're worried about going extinct from climate change, but it's one that you can see the effects of already right here in Dallas, because this bird was not something you'd see up in Dallas 10, 20 years ago, and now it's not that unusual to find it. I do want to note, though, when we're talking about birds gaining range from climate change, just because that range is becoming suitable range doesn't necessarily mean that that bird's going to be able to utilize it. The crested caracara is doing a really good job. It's a bird that explores, goes far, can find these new spots, but there might be habitable range that a bird that doesn't explore much could live in, but if it doesn't find it, it's not going to be able to live in that range. And there also could be more birds coming in. Birds can be territorial. Just because there's a suitable climate doesn't mean that this range is going to necessarily be something where this bird's going to be able to find a territory. So we talked about a bird that is moderately impacted by climate change that we can have the opportunity to help a lot. We talked about a bird that's fine. So here's the sad part. I'm sure you knew it was coming. There's some birds that maybe we've already let down too hard. I wouldn't be surprised if none of y'all have heard about this guy right here. This is the Harris's sparrow. Actually, my second favorite bird in the world. It's the largest sparrow in North America. It's the only songbird that breeds exclusively in Canada. It's just a cutie pie. I love it. In the wintertime, they come down here from Canada, and the Trinity River Audubon Center has a ton of them. It's super awesome. We're actually the spot that bird watchers come to when they want to see their Harris's sparrow, when they want to check that one off of their list. It's pretty cool. So one day I'm sitting in my computer thinking about how awesome Harris's sparrows are, how I love them so much, and then I made the mistake of looking at its climate change projections. You can see here that's its breeding range. Even under 1.5 degrees of warming, this bird is expected to lose 99% of its breeding range. And if you get up to 3 degrees, it's 100%. I wish I'd known that before I fell in love with it, because now there is a decent chance that I'm going to watch my second favorite bird go extinct in my lifetime. And if not extinct, at least dwindle down to maybe barely kept alive population on life support by conservationists trying to keep it alive. So we already face some devastating losses due to climate change in the bird world, but climate change isn't pass fail. There are a ton of different outcomes between now and 3 degrees Celsius of warming. And stopping climate change as soon as possible will save 150 bird species from the brink of extinction and improve the survival chances for many others. And that's why stopping climate change has become a top priority for the National Audubon Society, maybe a group that you wouldn't associate with renewable energy. And Audubon has a sort of strategic plan that we're working on. This is really in the Audubon weeds right here. And there's 4 pillars to our plan. And one of those 4 pillars is climate action. It's one of our 4 main things that all of our work is built around. And the 2 milestones we've got by 2028 on climate are the swift and responsible deployment of renewable energy through 100 gigawatts of renewable generation and transmission sited, and then also natural climate solutions as a win-win for birds and climate through 30 billion tons of carbon kept stored in forests, wetlands, and grasslands with additional carbon sequestered each year. I'm going to focus mostly on the renewable one because that's what y'all are here for, and that's what we're going to talk about. This doesn't mean that Audubon is out there building solar farms, putting up wind turbines themselves, but this means that these are projects that Audubon is helping on, either with consulting, with advocating on the behalf of, or partnering in some aspect. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. But Georgianne brought something up, so we should talk about it, the elephant in the room. A big part of Audubon's work is healing a relationship that sometimes ends up a little bit strained. Because unfortunately, natural allies of nature lovers and climate action lovers can end up pitted against each other. Have any of y'all seen know about this story? This one on the right here. The largest remaining tallgrass prairie in Texas is getting solar panels. Environmentalists can't stop it. Smiley woodfin prairie, half of it getting destroyed for a solar farm. Now, if you're not a prairie person, it might be hard to understand the big deal. And I get that. Most people, they can't tell the difference between a native prairie and a field. You know, they see a field, they think free real estate. But if you're a prairie person, and then this right here, it's still seen as an unholy desecration of the largest remaining fragment of one of the world's most endangered ecosystems. I mean, people talk about this all the time to this day as one of the great local ecological evils of recent times. Things like this pit allies against each other, which is really good if you don't want the U.S. to transition to renewable energy. So there are some challenges that wildlife faces from renewable energy because there's challenges that wildlife faces from any kind of infrastructure and development. This makes sense. Some of the challenges that can happen are listed here. These are the big ones. Habitat changes. That could be habitat getting plowed or fragmented by a solar farm or some other kind of project. This has to do with siting and construction. There's displacement. This one on the left here, these are little prairie chickens. Prairie chickens are a bird that need wide open prairies, really big prairies away from trees. They're not going to hang out near trees because there'll be hawks on the trees that'll come down, snatch them up. So when you put transmission lines through there, that's like putting giant trees there the prairie chickens aren't going to come near that anymore because they could get snatched up. Put that through a critical spot for them, it can end up doing some real damage. And then there's also collisions, the big one that people talk about. Now, this is blown out of proportion by bad faith actors, but some birds can collide with transmission lines, and especially in local species-specific cases, sometimes this can end up having a really negative effect on already vulnerable populations, especially of certain raptors. So all that to say, there are real challenges that arise, especially on local levels, but it's important to keep some perspective. The challenges that renewable energy poses for birds are solvable challenges. The threats that climate change poses for birds are not. Poorly sited renewable projects can end up harming already vulnerable populations of birds if the work isn't done to do it right. But the difference in scale is its orders of magnitude. Renewable energy isn't putting 389 species of bird at risk of extinction. Fossil fuel energy is. So we got some things that need doing to make sure that renewable energy isn't causing any unnecessary harm to local bird populations. And we've got some nature lovers who need to not be opposing the renewable energy that is necessary to save the birds. And that's where Audubon sort of comes into the picture. Audubon is a trusted, nonpartisan voice in bird conservation. And so we kind of have two main things that we kind of do in this avenue. One is working with developers to responsibly site and enact these projects. And the other is to build support for renewable energy among our base. I'm an educator in an Audubon Center, so the second one is kind of more my wheelhouse. I guess what I'm doing right now, talking about how birds need renewable energy. The first one, other people on the Audubon team are more working with this, and graphic came out kind of low res, but this graphic on the right shows some of the stuff that Audubon is working on with clean energy solutions. There's sort of 4 steps that we go through when we're looking at partnering on a project, putting Audubon's seal of approval on a project. We look at avoid, minimize, offset, and monitor. So avoid, that's the best one. That's if we're building a project and there's some critical bird habitat, can we reroute that transmission line or put it somewhere else so we're not impacting that critical bird habitat? Is there a better place we can put it? Minimize is developing and researching technologies within the actual project that can reduce risks. That could be something like maybe painting the rotor on a wind turbine's blade. That could be maybe if there's wind turbines in a spot where you have one of these vulnerable raptor populations that is susceptible to wind turbines, maybe there's technology to shut them off when those birds are coming, something like that. That sort of area. The next is offset. So if there is going to be a negative impact to wildlife from one of these projects, which infrastructure causes harm to wildlife, so not surprising, then is there something that we can do to make up for that? And a lot of times there is, because the money that it takes for conservation organizations to get land protected or restored is often, in the conservation world, a ton of money. But in the scheme of the budget of a large infrastructure project, it's a drop in the bucket a lot of times. So a lot of times we can find ways for these projects to say, okay, we're destroying this land here, but we can help protect or restore an even more critical piece of land here. And that's something awesome that can happen too. And then monitoring, which is using research and technology to keep up with what's going on at these projects as they're going on, so we can keep doing better in the future. Some recent wins or some work that Audubon has been involved with recently on these. There, this picture here, it's a lesser prairie chicken, one of the coolest birds in the world. There was a transmission line in New Mexico that was going to go through some of their critical habitat. This is the bird I was just talking about a minute ago, actually. It needs a large, unfragmented prairie. And this is a bird that is imperiled. It's not doing well. And so this transmission line was threatening those populations in New Mexico of this bird. And that had a lot of people upset. Audubon ended up getting a seat at the table, helped them reroute the transmission line to not harm the prairie chickens as much. And then also ended up making it a win overall, because in exchange for cutting into some of the prairie chicken habitat, they ended up helping protect and add land to prairie chicken habitat elsewhere that ended up connecting 80,000 acres of habitat that had been fragmented or unprotected before. So it ended up being a win-win for birds. A lot of what we're trying to do is dispel the myth that renewable energy and habitat conservation have to be opposed to each other. We want to show that they can work together. You can have a win for both of them. Another one was the SunZia project, which just went online 3 or 4 weeks ago, something like that. The largest renewable energy infrastructure project in the U.S. It's now operational. This was 16 or 20 years in the making, took a very long time. It was once opposed by conservationists, including local Audubon chapters, due to its impact it was going to have, especially on migrating sandhill cranes that were high risk of those running into transmission lines. So they worked with Audubon and other local organizations, got a seat at the table, and this project ended up becoming sort of the gold standard in responsible renewable energy development. Audubon worked on the avoid category, rerouting this transmission. It was going to cross the Rio Grande, go through some really critical habitat, found a new route for it. They also worked on the minimize aspect of the work, adding in some UV technology on the actual transmission lines. And from what I've heard so far, this UV technology has helped it become more visible to the birds and has led to an 80% reduction in sandhill crane collisions, which is a really, really good reduction. That's amazing right there. And then also, when they rerouted this, they went through an existing corridor in a national wildlife refuge. And so then to offset some of that impact, they got protections for additional land around the National Wildlife Refuge to be added into the refuge system. So they ended up gaining some more protected habitat as a result of this project. And in return for all that, Audubon became an advocate for this project, helped build consensus and support around it within the conservation community as well as the renewable energy community. Oh, and I should also say, I'm talking a lot about transmission here. One thing that people ask a lot is, I guess in the last couple of years, like, hasn't it become harder to get renewable energy projects going with the current administration, with the government being what it is? And Audubon's a nonpartisan organization, so we try hard to position ourselves to be able to work with whatever administration is currently in power to advance bird conservation. But we're not going to lie and say that it hasn't gotten harder to advance renewable energy in the last couple of years. And so a lot of the focus has been on going all in on transmission for the last couple of years, not doing renewables, but making sure that while we're able to get these transmission wins, we're not letting progress just stop. And so transmission is getting the energy around. You probably know about transmission if we're the renewable energy group. But if we build up all this renewable energy we need, we also need to be able to get it to cities and homes. And we're going to need to double, even triple the current transmission capacity of the United States. And you can see here a bit of a graphic showing the existing transmission capabilities and then what we need. And in Texas, we're going to need a lot of transmission. And so there's a lot of infrastructure that's going to need to be put into place, and it's important to make sure it's put into place well. And speaking of Texas, here's a little bit of work here in Texas. I know someone was asking about Audubon Texas's climate work in an email that I got before this. So here's one example of it. Now, legislative advocacy is something Audubon dabbles in. It's not our main thing like the Sierra Club or something like that, but we do work on it at a national level where we have dedicated team members. And then at the Texas level, we're a small team, but we did make a point during the last session to show up at the Capitol and work with a broad coalition of other organizations to stop some anti-renewable energy bills, Senate bills 388, 715, and 819. Maybe some of y'all also were part of this coalition. We're working on this. These would have put some extra red tape and regulations around renewable energy infrastructure that don't exist for fossil fuel energy, would have made it harder to build out the renewable energy we need. So we showed up at the Capitol advocating, bringing out supporters and ranchers to make testimony, and we were really proud that these bills didn't end up passing. So you can see that Audubon's role isn't necessarily to lead the charge in renewable energy. There's other groups that are better positioned to do that, but we are definitely here to support and uplift the work of advancing renewable energy wherever it makes sense. And that is something that we eagerly want to do because it's essential for our work in bending the bird curve. And there are some resources that y'all can use in your own advocacy and also might be interesting for you to read through as people who are interested in all of this. The first one is Survival by Degrees, which I think was linked. There's the website where you can look at all those cool graphics shifting around. There's also just the overall report, dives a little bit more into the science. There's also Audubon's Birds and Transmission report, which dives into how to build the grid that the birds need, something we talked about here, but that goes into much more specifics. And then the birds and offshore wind report is a really cool one that came out a year ago or so, right before the federal government like blocked offshore wind. Came out, which talks about how birds need offshore wind. It's important for birds, and yes, there can be some challenges, but if you do it right, it's solvable, and it is a net positive for birds overall. So I totally recommend finding these. They're all on audubon.org and using them when you need to make the case for renewable energy, especially if birds are coming up in that conversation. And another thing, this isn't necessarily renewable energy, but a fun program we have is Climate Watch. Like I said, Audubon does a lot of science. It's not just our professional scientists. Audubon also, part of the power of it is it has chapters all across the nation who help us out with community science. And Climate Watch is a survey, happens twice a year. This is a poster for the spring dates. There'll be winter dates too, where you go out on a survey looking for specific birds, and we're measuring them those same ways every year to see how climate change is impacting their ranges. Like this one right here is the painted bunting, one that we have here in Dallas. If you haven't ever seen one of these, come to the Audubon Center. We have lots of painted buntings here at Trinity River Audubon Center. Beautiful bird. And if you want to be involved with that, go and do some bird watching while also helping conservation and climate science. Follow Trinity River Audubon Center. In the winter, we'll have another climate watch. So I want to make sure we have some time for discussion here because I'd be interested to hear y'all's perspective as energy people, and then hopefully you'll be interested to hear some more of my perspective as bird people. But the bottom line is we can't save the birds without deploying renewable energy and building the grid needed to utilize it. And so Audubon wants to take a very active role in promoting renewable energy build out across the nation however we can. And I'm so glad that I was invited out here so that hopefully we can have a relationship and work with y'all on taking something that sometimes is a point of tension, which surprised me when I first entered the conservation space because I kind of came more from the climate world, and making sure that this natural allyship actually gets to be an allyship and we can work together to create the world that we both want and need. Yeah, thanks so much. Happy to answer any questions and chat with anybody.
Okay, let me start. Nathan, when is the Trinity River Audubon Center? What are its hours and days of operation, and where is it located for people that haven't been there?
Really good question. So we're open every day but Monday. So I'm at it right now on Saturday. I don't work on Sundays, but we're open on Sundays. And we're open generally from 9 to 4. On Saturdays, sometimes we open really early. Usually we open at 8, but 9 to 4 most days. And we do a lot of field trips. We have kids come out. So our bulk of our stuff is during the school day. But that's when we're open, and we are located in Southeast Dallas near Loop 12 and Jim Miller. We're just off of Loop 12. If you're on Loop 12 and its name changes into Great Trinity Forest Way, you're really close. That's where we are. We're at where it's Great Trinity Forest Way.
Very good. Thank you.
Nathan, we did have a question earlier, even before your presentation. Any thoughts on what happened to or follow up on the initiative in Dallas and Fort Worth in 2019 by the Audubon Society called Audubon Texas Clean Energy Future? This person attended the kickoff meeting, but doesn't know what happened to it.
That's a good question. I wasn't with Audubon yet in 2019, but that is when the Survival by Degrees report came out. So I assume that was something that was coinciding with that. And I'm not sure what was set up to happen from that initial meeting, but I'd say that probably the things that were set in motion, the most recent culmination of those would be the Climate Watch science, and then also probably the legislative action that we were doing in the last legislative session around renewable energy there. That would be my best answer.
Wonderful. And then there was another question about any thoughts on Audubon's stand on the city of Dallas withdrawn proposal to put community solar systems on the Deep Woods and Loop 12 landfills back in 2021. And he also says, suffice it to say, this is a long and painful story, not worth rehashing, other than any comments you may have about that.
Sure. I guess a little background. I don't have an official Audubon stance on this, so I'll speak for myself on this and try to also speak diplomatically so I don't get myself in any trouble. So Trinity River Audubon Center, we're built on what used to be the largest illegal dump in Texas history, where it was a neighborhood. It was majority white. Then throughout the 70s, it transitioned to being a majority black neighborhood, and then illegal dumping started from construction companies in this area. It became a huge dump. So much trash that if you stacked it up on a normal city block, it'd be taller than the Empire State Building. And this dump would catch on fire. This dump would catch on fire, burn for over a month. The community was getting sick from breathing in the smoke from this fire, dangerous chemicals in the dump. They said when they swallowed, it would feel like they were swallowing gravel, just when they're like swallowing their spit because their throats hurt so much. So they fought back for years and years, and they were able to get the dump cleaned up. And they were able to get the trash removed partially, and then partially buried right around where I am right now. And they had it made into a nature center, so that rather than this sort of environmental blight on their landscape, they had a cool place they could come and explore the land. And we work with the dump. The dump is surrounding the Audubon Center, so surrounding the habitat we manage, and we work with them to manage their habitat too. So lots of grassland birds nest out there. The wildlife that lives here also lives there. It's a continuous thing. And back in the day, there were plans for they were looking to put some solar panels somewhere, which is great, and we love. And one of the spots was, hey, there's a big open field right here on this dump as a spot for the solar energy. And so it's sort of like with the Smiley Woodfin situation, where um, when we're looking to build infrastructure, we're looking for the easiest, sort of cheapest, convenientest place to build it, and that ends up being natural habitat a lot of the time. So, in my opinion, that would be a spot that we're looking to avoid, and see if we can find a better spot. Since that is a continuation of the habitat that we manage here for birds, right along the Trinity River. And so I don't know that if there's an official stance on it at this point, since it's long gone, didn't end up happening. That was several years ago, but it's definitely something that illustrates the point I think I talked about earlier about how I think it's important that we have relationships and conversations going between the energy groups and the conservation groups. Otherwise, because we both feel so passionate about our subjects, since we're both trying to save the world, it can end up becoming a heated thing.
Wonderful. That and in fact, one of our past chairs said perhaps NTREG and or Texas Solar Energy Society and Sierra Club should coordinate our legislative advocacy efforts with the Audubon. So
That would be awesome. And if you need help setting that up, you can reach out to me. I can get you all in touch with Chloe Crumley, our person in Austin, and that would be really cool.
Okay, wonderful. There's a question in the chat from Grace Darling. Can you see it, or you want me to read it to you?
I see it. Other than Harris's sparrow, what other species of greatest conservation need are in Texas? Is there a role for suburban homeowners in bird conservation through renewable energy? There are a lot of species of greatest conservation need in Texas. The painted bunting is actually one. And they sort of vary for greatest conservation need between ones that like the indigo bunting and the painted bunting, where it's like, oh, we have a chance at really saving these, and some that's like, oh, these are really, really, really in trouble. Might end up sort of on like captive breeding program, life support sort of situation after a while. What are some others that I can think of off the top of my head? The grasshopper sparrow, pretty much if it's a prairie dependent bird, it's of greatest conservation need, because like you saw in that graph, grassland dependent birds are plummeting super duper hard. So there's lots you can do in a suburban setting too. A lot of these prairie dependent birds need wide open prairies, but other birds need habitat as well. So planting native plants, using renewable energy, and then also something we talk about a lot is lights out when birds are migrating through. If your lights are on at night, that draws birds in and they crash into windows. And you'd think that isn't too big of a deal, but people always make a big deal about birds crashing into wind turbines, but they don't crash into nearly as many wind turbines as they do windows. So it's actually the second largest direct killer of birds in the United States, killing, in North America at least, killing 1 billion birds a year crashing into windows. So minimizing that is a great thing you can do in a suburban setting as well.
Do you have any favorite of those decals that you could put on your window, or does Audubon Society sell those decals?
I don't know of Audubon Society selling them. I would look through the American Bird Conservancy's page on these. They'll link the most effective ones, because there's ways that like kind of help, and then there's ways that like we've done the studies and we know if you do it just like this, it's going to be like a 90% reduction. So my favorite is the one where it's just little dots that are 2 inches apart, because like the first day you have it there, you're like, whoa, what are these dots? But then by the second or third day, you don't even see them anymore. And that's super duper effective. It breaks up the illusion for birds, and it's unobtrusive to the view.
Thank you. We have that so often at our house. It just pains us when it happens.
I see James Ornstein has a hand raised.
Yeah, I had a couple comments and a follow-up. First of all, I live in the city of Duncanville, and the Trinity River, not Trinity River, Audubon Society manages two nature centers right near here, and they do a fantastic job, and we're very grateful for that. Um, on the subject of the birds hitting the windows, I think you all were involved in the plans for the new K. Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center. They put a huge amount of effort into putting glass that and some kind of fretting on it that's supposed to reduce the number of bird kills. So there again, I think you all been doing great work. And then I wanted to thank you for your answer to the question about the Deep Woods landfill. It was very diplomatic, and what I'm hoping for is there was a woman with the city of Dallas at the time, Susan Alvarez, and she was part of the Office of Environment Quality and Sustainability. And her thought was that she wanted to get together some sort of convening of people in the state of Texas to come up with a policy guidelines for putting solar on environmentally sensitive lands. So I don't know that that's ever happened, but that sounds like something that would be worth doing.
Susan Alvarez is awesome. I think she's with the North Texas Council of Governments now, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, yeah, super cool. And yeah, the convention center, absolutely. In fact, last when I met Georgianne for the Garden Club presentation, that was sort of in the thick of us making the push to really try to get the convention center to do this bird friendly um, initiatives, because that was the number one killer. That building, we surveyed downtown Dallas, and 30% of the bird collisions that we found out of 129 locations were at the convention center downtown. So getting them to go bird friendly is huge. If that like it will save thousands of birds over the course of its lifetime if we can do that. So we're really pumped for that. And I agree. I think one thing that I'm excited about this meeting for is just we want to be in the conversation as a partner and an ally in these renewable energy things, rather than occasionally coming up as a hey, no, we don't like this kind of figure in these conversations. So please keep us in mind for the moment.
And final question. So I don't know if you can see them out your window, but there used to be two ground mount solar systems in the parking lot out there. And I was curious if they're still there and if they're still producing, because it's one of the problems has been that systems that are not maintained will kind of have problems.
Yeah, not producing. Not since I got here. Sadly, yeah. No, we've got um yeah, it would be nice if those were maintained. I don't know if it's just not a priority. Our center is interesting because it's the city of Dallas owns the building and owns the land, and we sort of manage and staff at it here. So I'm not the one who deals with the negotiations there, but sometimes it's like, oh, is this the thing that Audubon's supposed to do or the thing that the city's supposed to do, sort of situation. But those are not currently producing.
Thank you very much.
Nathan, this is Randy.
Hi.
In North Texas, and you're familiar with it, the Blackland Prairie, we really shouldn't have trees unless they're immediately adjacent to the corridors, like in the Trinity and things like that. And that's part of what makes up the habitat. And there is effectively none of it left. I mean, the 3,500 acres you were talking about and the woodfin stuff and whatever, it's a drop in the bucket. We've lost it. So the thing is that my question is, are there flagship species that, maybe, how is it that you try to get Joe Rancher, the only guy who's got enough property to think about, oh, well, maybe I'll do this versus that when it comes to somebody who's going to come along and give me an energy package that they want on my land. How, do you just go at it in economic terms, or are there flagship species, your prairie chickens, your bobwhites, whatever, that sort of get you along the path the same way?
Bobwhite's a really good one. I'm glad you brought that up because when I talk to older people, sometimes they'll think that there's still bobwhites around. I've never seen a bobwhite in North Texas. They are prairie dependent bird that, like you said, they're pretty much gone now, and people try to bring them back. But they're only going to be at really good ranches, basically, at this point. And also meadowlarks are another one that's in a super duper steep decline that's prairie dependent. We work with ranchers too. This is more on the not on the renewable side, but there's a team, the Audubon Conservation Ranching Team. It's really been taking off the last couple of years, where we work with ranchers monitoring their land, and if these ranchers are doing bird friendly practices, regenerative prairie management, because a lot of times these are the only places where there's prairies left in any sort of significant amount, then they get this like Audubon certified bird friendly beef label. And so there's a few ranches in our area now that have that. You can buy some of it at like Whole Foods and Natural Grocers officially as of this year. And then there's one Burgundy beef. They have a storefront in Ross, and all of their stuff is Audubon certified bird friendly as well. So that's one way we work with private landowners on grassland conservation. I don't know if that answers necessarily the question of if someone's trying to come in and develop. I guess that might be more when we're looking at getting conservation easements, which isn't something Audubon does, but other things like Texas Land Conservancy work on, which is where the land gets protected as a sort of conservation natural area in perpetuity.
Well, unless we have any other questions, I just want to thank Nathan so much for joining us today. I know Saturday is a busy day for you. And is it okay with you if we go ahead and publish this presentation on our YouTube channel and include your PowerPoint?
Yes, absolutely. If I get in trouble from it, then it's my own doing.
I don't think you're going to get in trouble. You've done an excellent job, I think, and a very diplomatic job of explaining Audubon's position. And so we appreciate you so much. And this really does give us good information to share if and when somebody tells us that renewable energy is bad for birds. It looks like Eric Pratt has one more question. Does Audubon promote EV, electric vehicle adoption?
Yeah, I wouldn't say promote. We support it, but it's not something that we're like is a strategic priority for us. We have like in our parking lot, there's an EV parking spot, and that's about as far as we go. I think it's just not where our voice is the most useful, but we like it.
Okay, wonderful.
Adding to that, I just added a post under Eric's on Thursday of this coming week, July the 16th. Lori Clark from the North Central Texas Council of Governments is going to speak about the regional electric charging station projects. And this will be at the North Texas Association of Energy Engineers monthly meeting. It's a paid meeting, but they do allow visitors, and the details are in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you. And so the last thing that I will say is to the NTREG board members, I sent you an email this morning. There is a quick vote question on there, or three voting questions. If you will, at your earliest convenience, look at that for me so I can get that information to Tolu as soon as possible. So thank you, everyone. And again, we look forward to having you at our August 7th meeting, which is a field trip to Enphase. It's going to be really cool. And then we'll figure out where we're going to meet afterwards for lunch for those of you who are able to join us. So thank you, and everyone go out and have a wonderful weekend.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments or questions before I close the recording?